me pop this up. Okay, let's see. I see Tennessee and Harlem. Kendall's from Harlem. Love Harlem, man. Arlington, Texas. Love Arlington. I've been there a couple of times. Carmen said amen. And Stephanie, that's right. Rodney from Oakland, Oaktown, one of the greatest cities ever. Oakland is in my top three. Brooklyn, Houston, and Oakland, and London. Those are four of my favorite cities. I have a special relationship with a lot of cities. You know, when you speak in a lot of places, you get a chance to meet a lot of great people all around the country, all around the world, actually. And so it's really been the most fun part of doing this weird job that I have, which I don't even have a job description. It's just black man running his mouth, and every now and then he says something smart. Let's see, Newport News, Virginia, Naptown, Indianapolis. I was there last weekend. I ran a half marathon with my wife. I was mortified. I didn't want to do it, but then again, I don't want to get fat and die. So it's like lesser of two evils. That's my lesser of two evils. And we're actually going to talk about that a little bit tonight as we read into Black Labor, White Wealth by Dr. Claud Anderson. And we're going to talk a little bit about the lesser of two evils. And I'm going to give you some data to kind of help you understand why, if we keep doing that, we're going to literally be stuck in the same place 60 years from now that we are right now. You know, one of the problems, one of the big, persistent, ugly Grinch problems that we have as Black people is that there's a lot of people that do a lot of talking, but nothing's moving forward. There's a lot of voting and a lot of praying and a lot of well wishing and a lot of marching and screaming and hollering and a lot of hard work actually that's occurring. But the question is, how effective is that, right? And so that's what we're going to do here tonight in Black Labor, White Wealth. And those of you who are listening online, what I do is the first 15 minutes of the book club, I do that publicly so you guys can kind of hear what's going on in here. But if you want to join us for the entire thing, you can go register for free. The book club is free at blackkeystogreatness.com. Blackkeystogreatness.com. You not only get access to the weekly book club, which is every Wednesday at 8:30, you also get access to my life class. I call it a Black Life class, because what I did was I documented everything that I did and used as a basic skill set to be successful. And I made a ton of content related to that, and everything from time management to dealing with how do you deal with haters, how do you deal with a setback, how do you set goals and accomplish your goals, things like that. And I picked these things up, from basically, getting my PhD was really, really hard. I was in a really, 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 really hard program. And some of you may know, some of you may not. I mean, I was literally the only Black man on the planet to finish and get a PhD in finance in the year 2002. And it's because I had to literally come up with survival skill, where you can keep going through the storm no matter what. Don't get me wrong, and I'm not in any way trying to, undermine, or what is the word, dismiss any of the challenges, the psychological challenges people have. I understand whenever we give up on something, that's fine. And I know right now that's a sensitive topic because you saw what happened with Naomi Osaka and Simone Biles and things like that. And that's always their right to do. But I know that there are some things in your life that you want so bad that you can't give up, that it's just not an option, and so getting my PhD was one of those things. It was, you talk about psychological torture and things like that. It was absolutely horrible. It was racial abuse, everything you can name, unfairness, constant unfairness. And one thing I've noticed in the community that really kind of concerns me is that it seems to be that there's some idea that says that your Blackness is kind of a get out of jail free card, that when it gets too hard, you just walk away, and everybody says, okay, it's all right that you walked away because you're Black, and we know that being Black is hard. So we understand you walked away. In fact, you should walk away from everything. You should walk away from your kids because taking care of kids is hard. Walk away from your marriage because, well, being married is hard. Walk away from the marathon you're trying to finish. Well, because running a marathon is hard. Walk away from trying to finish school, well, because you're from the hood and you got problems, and everybody understands why you dropped out of school because after all, you had a baby and it got tough, right? Like we most of the time I have found that there's always an outlet, and the thing is that it seems that I always felt that as a Black man that they made the outs a little easier, more convenient for me. Like, because when you set the bar super low, it doesn't leave a lot of room for high achievement, because as soon as something goes wrong, somebody says, well, you are Black. At least you ain't in jail. You're a Black man. At least you ain't in jail. Anybody ever heard stuff like that? Well, at least you ain't in jail. At least you graduated from high school. And that's, don't get me wrong. I'm happy if you graduate from high school. Like, it's good for you that you didn't go back to jail. But some of us, maybe want a little bit more out of life, and so I almost will say that I'm not completely in alignment with the culture that says that if something gets too hard, you should automatically just let it go, unless you just don't care about having the thing that you want. I think about things like when Michael Jordan was trying to win 6 NBA championships, nobody would have faulted him if he'd only won 3, right? He would still be a legend. He'd still be in the Hall of Fame. Everybody would still think he was great. But Michael decided, no, I don't want 3. I don't want 4. I don't want 5. I want all 6. I want every single one of those championships. And if I don't get 6 out of 6, I'm going to be very upset with myself. And so that's a personal thing. So your standards or the things that matter to you is a very personal thing. So again, I know we have the conversation about Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka, and that to me, when they decided to walk away from whatever they were doing, that says to me that whatever it was that was there wasn't something that they really wanted that bad, and I totally respect that. I completely respect it. I mean, both of them made a ton of money. They can go do whatever they want. They have every right to do that, and so it's a personal choice. So I think that in your life, when you're trying to do things that are hard, ask yourself, is it worth it? And really to go further, to use Naomi Osaka as an example, people don't really understand how hard it is to be ranked number 1 in the world at something. You have to damn near be a lunatic to be number 1 in the world. That means you didn't just beat all the regular people. That's the 99% of the people who never got a chance to become professional tennis players. You're beating out 100% of the most dedicated, most committed, most athletic female athletes on the planet. That is a lot of pressure. Like that, like you really have to be in tune with that objective. And if that's not something that you want, then you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't even try. It's not fun. It's not fun to be at the top. I feel sorry for people that are the absolute best in the world at what they do, unless that's really what they want. Like I felt sorry for the fact that Tiger Woods used to have to play golf 12, 13, 14 hours a day when there are other things you want to do besides play golf all day. Right. And so ultimately, I would say to you, in general, and this is why I created Black Keys to Greatness, is that everybody has their own barometer for excellence. Everybody has their own standard in terms of what you want, what matters to you, and the things that don't matter to you. Like, for example, when I run races with my wife, we run these half marathons and 5Ks and 10Ks, and she likes to run fast. And she'll say, come on, boys, we can go faster. We can, you can get your 5K time down. And I'm like, I don't really want to get my 5K time down. I don't care. I don't like running. Running hurts. I'm tired. This is not fun. My goal is to get across the finish line. That's all I want to do, because I know that if I get across the finish line, I won't get fat. That is my number one objective. And that's personal, right? Whereas if maybe in another area, my goal may be to be the best in the world. So, for example, when it comes to what I do as a scholar, as a Black scholar, in this B1 space and what we're doing, oh no, I'm 100% for real about this. Like this is complete, total ride or die. You can't stop me. You would have to literally put a bullet in my body to get me to stop doing what I'm doing. And even then, I'm going to continue, because I've documented probably 100,000 hours of content that will continue to be played even after I'm gone. That's literally in my estate plan for them to continue to share these ideas for the next 200 years to as many young people that want to hear them. Right. So that's an area where I'm not walking off the court, right? I'm not gonna, I'm not walking away from that, right? Because it matters to me that much. So in your own life, I want you to pick your ride or dies. I know this is a little bit different from what we're going to talk about today in Black Labor, White Wealth, but I really encourage you to disconnect from the standards that are out there. A lot of the standards for Blackness are built on something that is not Black excellence. A lot of the standards that are given to us are built on inferiority, built on mediocrity, built on this idea that because you're Black, the best thing you can do is just survive. And I don't like any of that, because it distracts you. When you're spending all your time thinking about the fact that you're Black and it's hard to be Black, then you can't spend your time and energy becoming excellent at something. My wife grew up in Gary, Indiana, right, very close to where the Jackson 5 grew up. And one of the things that she said that she didn't even realize as a kid was, and I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this, but she said that when I grew up, I didn't see white people. She said, we didn't even talk to white people. It was just always Black people. So you didn't even get up every day thinking about, oh, I'm Black and Black Lives Matter and it's so hard and I got to show white people I can do this and do that. She said, no, she went to this school called Emerson in Gary. And in this school, they had some of the best, most talented performers. Like, it was a performing arts school. So she worked alongside people that went on and performed with great artists like Aretha Franklin and Michael Jackson and the big name actors in Hollywood. And they were super talented and really good at what they did. And so they would go places and they would perform against the best bands in the country, and they would win. Or they would do, they would go to concerts and they would be the orchestra. A bunch of little children would be actually doing what the orchestra does, because they were just dedicated to doing what they did. And they had this spirit of community and Black excellence, where it was like, look, you're here. We don't want to hear you talk about being Black. Everybody's Black. Now be good at what you do. Learn how to play that song. Learn what your motto is for life. Learn how to be a straight A student, that type of thing. And that kind of empowerment is something that that I really want you to kind of think about, because I think that if you can create that in your own space, in your own home, then that will allow you to really truly live your best life, right? That's really truly get a chance to fly, as opposed to saying, my God, I'm Black. Everybody knows it. It sucks to be Black. And if I survive, then I've won. You haven't won, you survived, right? So here we talk about powernomics. We're not talking about survivalnomics. We're not talking about strugglenomics. We're not talking about keeping our face off the floor, just scraping ourselves off the sidewalk. I want you to fly like an eagle, right? And that requires a specific mindset. Okay, I hope that makes sense. All right, so let me hop in, and I'm reading this week. Last week, as you know, we got to page 32 in Black Labor, White Wealth by Dr. Claud Anderson, and we were just about to jump into the section about power, and we talked about different types of power. And Dr. Anderson mentions institutional power, where you have institutions that have the ability to have power because they have what he refers to as a non-biological permanency. All that means is that institutions can't die. Ideas can't die, right? And so when you're talking about wealth and power, your goal in really obtaining immortality is to inject your spirit and your resources into something that cannot die, right? That requires you to get past things like our ego. We one of the reasons our leadership has failed, in my view, is because we got a lot of old leaders who think they're never going to die, right? They think that I'm always going to be the man, I'm the most important, whatever. And I'm not criticizing anybody, but I'm going to say that the way that groups maintain long-term power is they put their energy into something that cannot die. So LeBron James, for example, was a great basketball player who made a lot of money playing basketball, running and jumping and dribbling and everything else. Well, he's going to get older. He's going to get old, and then he's going to die. Well, the whole time he's made about $1 billion in wealth, and he's put that wealth into things that cannot die. He has wealth in his studio that he owns. He probably owns about 100 different businesses. He's putting that in his estate plan, where his children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren are going to carry the torch after he's gone, right? He's transferred his wealth into things that cannot die and things that can make money without him having to do any work, right? So institutions have power primarily because they cannot die, and there's some other things there as well. Also, they're diversified, right? When you have an institution, think about this. I want you to process it like this. If I was to ask any white person, okay, who are the greatest Black leaders in America? Who are the most well-known Black leaders in America, right? They would pick some Black people on TV. Maybe they pick an Al Sharpton, or the usual suspects. You know what I mean by that? A Barack Obama, whatever it is, right? Well, who's the leader of the Jewish community? Like who is that? Do the Jews have an Al Sharpton that they lean on every time something goes wrong in the Jewish community? Who is the number one leader in the Jewish community? Can you name anybody? The person that's always in front of the cameras every time a Jewish person gets shot or whatever? There is no person. But what you could probably name is the ADL. Is it the Anti-Defamation League? Right? The Anti-Defamation League. Who is that? Is that a person? There's no person named Anti-Defamation League. That's an organization, right? That probably consists of dozens of people that work for the company or work for the organization, along with hundreds or even thousands of people that support the organization financially and otherwise, right? You can't kill Jewish leadership. You can't assassinate their character. You can't end their life, right? They're going to always, that energy, that spirit, that institution will never die. Also, he talks about wealth power, and economic power is the number one source of power in America. And one of the biggest things that we have to do as Black people is stop focusing on all these other things that give us the perception of power, and understand that if you have the money, then you have the power, period. In America, if you have the money, you have the power. The only thing more powerful than the money is the guns, right? But the people that have the money control the people that have the guns. That's why a lot of wars that happen overseas, they occur because the people that have the money are paying the soldiers to go and conquer territory. They say, go attack Iraq and Afghanistan so we can get the oil that's over there, right? So that's where the real power is. Screaming and hollering, there's no power in screaming and hollering. In fact, the more you scream and holler, the more you're showing you don't have power. People that have power, they just do what they're going to do. They just execute on you. They don't even talk about it. They don't even want you to know that they're coming. People that are really powerful don't talk that much. People that don't have power talk loud to make you think that they have power. They bark the loudest. In fact, it's just like in poker. When I told you guys I play poker, I love poker. It's a great game of strategy, math, and psychology. And one thing about poker is that when a guy really pretends like he has the best hand, he usually doesn't have the best hand. The guy who has the best hand that you got to worry about is the quiet one, the one who pretends like he has the weakest hand because he wants to get you vulnerable so he can attack you and get and catch you slipping, right? So the same thing is true, I think, in politics. That the people that have the weakest hand are usually the ones who are the loudest. So you don't always have to be the loudest, but you want to be the most effective. Now, here's what I'm going to read some of this to you. It says, he's talking about. Okay, let me back up a little bit. He says, since wealth remains concentrated and rigidly locked in the hands of whites, black progress will be difficult. As far back as 1790, the richest 10% of white households has held half of the nation's wealth. By the eve of the Civil War, 1% of the wealthiest whites owned 24% of the nation's wealth. 100 years later, in 1969, they owned 24.9% of the nation's wealth. And that number has actually gotten worse. I think now you actually have greater wealth disparity than you had even, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. During the same time periods, black wealth remained 1% and 2%. It is astonishing that the percentages of wealth controlled by whites or blacks has not changed throughout the nation's involvements in the Civil War, emancipation of the slaves and Reconstruction, World War I, the Great Depression, World War II, Korean and Vietnam Wars, and the Civil Rights Movement, which was followed by a second Reconstruction period. Through it all, the wealthy white elite collectively held onto everything. According to census reports, the great disparity between black and white wealth and income levels continues to increase. The U.S. Department of Commerce Bureau of the Census in 1986 reported that the average white household had 10 times more wealth than the average black household. The wealth gap is so large that the three richest white people with a collective net worth of 15 billion. Now remember, this is in the 1980s. Now the collective net worth of the three richest white people is about $300 billion, something like that. Let's see, they have a greater financial net worth than all black businesses combined. Now, let's pause on that. So that means if you took the three richest white people in America and added up their net worth of the three richest white people in America would be more than the entire net worth of every black business in this country put together. I would almost dare to say that their collective net worth would exceed the collective net worth of all of black America. Where we took the 10 richest white people, probably have more money than all black people, all 40 million black people added up. That's a big problem. Obviously, that's an infrastructural issue. That's something that, in my view, is something that should be brought up in every election, every time. And I tell you what I do, because I get reached out to people that want, support and politically and otherwise or whatever. And I just say, well, if you're not going to talk about the money, then don't talk to me. I only want to talk about the money. That's the first and the last part of our conversation. I'm not really going to talk to you about anything else except for the money. And when you talk to me about voting rights, I'm not stupid. I see voting rights as you making sure that your power is protected. You give me voting rights so I can go vote for you and keep you in power. That does not empower me. That empowers you. So, in fact, I would even say, in order for me to even allow you to fight for my voting rights, you better give me money first. Because if I'm going to give you power, you better give me some power. I'm not going to get power by giving you power. I get power when you give me power, right? So you got to get out of these, these typical conversations and start just keeping it real simple, keep it focused. Like Joe Pesci in Goodfellas, F you, pay me. F you, pay me. What about the blah, blah, blah? No, F you, pay me. What about the F you, pay me? Well, we just put up a Black Lives Matter. No, F you, pay me. And I really think that should be our slogan. That should be our the talking point every time. F you, pay me. Pay me first, and then after you've paid for the right to even have a conversation with me about my support, then maybe I'll give you my support. Maybe not, but pay me first, and then we'll talk. Okay, so let's keep going. The major driver of wealth and the income gap between blacks and whites is the maldistribution of poverty. The poverty level for blacks is 3 times that of whites and Hispanics. Nearly 1/3 of blacks are classified as poor, and 50% of all single black female heads of households are poverty stricken. Poverty is a power impeder. So this is where we get back to what we were referring to about the importance of relationships. I can't emphasize that enough, that George Fraser came in and he was talking about relationships. And when you think about relationships, is anytime you're relating to another person that you want to care about or work with or build with on any level, business partners, friendships, people that you hang around with, people that you date and sleep with, of course, because you're creating a business together, which might be a child, right? You're building a family together, whatever that is. And that baby mama, baby daddy culture is absolutely ruining black wealth. It's obliterating black wealth, because not only are you leaving the mothers poor and poverty stricken, trying to take care of children in an inadequate way in many cases, but you're also, the fathers are out here I don't know if they're just chasing booty or whatever, but trying to get somebody else pregnant. I have no idea. Or maybe they're booted out of the house. Maybe they're kept away from their kids, right? We've seen all the stories across the board, but they're struggling too. So really, when you're together, you make a great team. But when you're individual, you're both scrambling and struggling in the middle of a war, and you have no teammates. You're literally playing a team sport called wealth and power, and you don't have any teammates. So you're going to go down most of the time. So effectively, when they talk about single parent heads of households being the poorest people in America, that's been true for a very long time. And it's not just true for the women, it's true for the men as well. So how you go about choosing who to mate with and how to proceed in that process, you probably want to think about it like starting a business. We'll go take a class when it comes to starting a business. We'll go sit down and listen to an expert when it comes to starting a business to make sure we do it right. We file our taxes, we run our company right, we manage our bank accounts right. But how many people do you know actually go take a class on how to start a family? I mean, seriously, how many people do that? Most people don't do that. Most people go and they just wing it. They just try to figure it out. And if it don't work out, they just bounce out and go. Right. Well, your family's more important than your business. Business, you can scrap it. You can declare bankruptcy with the LLC and move on with your life. And it's okay. Nobody's going to, really, sort of follow you around for the rest of your life. But you go have a baby with somebody if you haven't done it yet. Those of you who've already done it, say I. Raise your hand. I had a child when I was 18. That doesn't go away. It's not like you wait 3 years and it erases from your credit report. No, that child is always there. And that poverty, unfortunately, it can create broken children as well. So you're continuing a poverty trap. You're continuing the poverty cycle when you do that, right? So just think about these things and don't mate with people who haven't thought about these things, right? So that's my 2 cents on that. Let's keep going. Numerical population power. This is another type of power. In a democratic society, the numerical majority wins, rules, and decides. The theoretical rights of a minority may or may not be respected, especially if they are a planned minority. Numerical population power is the power that comes to those groups that acquire power through their sheer size. The black population peaked in the 1750s when slaves and free blacks accounted for approximately, pay attention now, 33% of the total population. So there was a time where 1 out of every 3 people in America was black. That means your vote, if you could have voted back then, your vote would have really moved an election. It would be a very big deal. So 200 years ago, over 200 years ago, you were 1/3 of the population. Let's see what happened there, because you're not 1/3 of the population anymore. The high numerical strength of blacks caused fear and concern among whites. They feared the loss of their own numerical power. Word of Black Haitians' successful slave revolt in the 1790s had spread across America and reportedly ignited several slave revolts in southern states. The first U.S. Congress enacted the first naturalization law that declared America to be a nation for, quote, whites only. So in response to that, they made it official. This is a white country, whites only. That's what matters. This Naturalization Act and other income incentives attracted a massive influx of legal and illegal European ethnics, followed by Asian and Hispanic immigrants a century later. The population declined to 9%. So they didn't just declare it a white country, but they also started importing people from other countries, except for the black people. They specifically, pay attention now, they specifically made laws saying, we will bring anybody in here to help our numbers except black people. And we're going to label them as our allies. We're going to either label them as white, or we're going to tell them to stay away from the black people. The immigration quota on blacks remained 0 until their total percentage of the population declined to 9%. By making blacks a planned numerical minority, so they planned this. Remember, systematic racism has a plan. The question is, what's your plan? If you have no plan, then your plan is to get your ass kicked. So just know, if you don't have a plan, then you've made a plan. Having no plan is a plan. So what is your plan? Because they definitely have a plan on you. So by making blacks a planned numerical minority, white society assured its dominance in a democratic society where the majority always wins. So one other type of power they accumulated was numerical power by systematically planning a society that would become fundamentally white supremacist by allowing white people to have the majority. So you're just going to end up being outnumbered to the point where even when they say everybody can vote, you have fewer votes, therefore you lose. Political power. Let's talk about that and its supportive concepts. Political power comprises all those activities that relate to the authoritative uses of public and governmental powers under existing traditions, laws, and constitutional authorities of government. But political power can be acquired either through or outside of the normal process of elective or appointed office. Political power is an important power for a depressed group to have because politics is the process that typically decides who shall have what benefits in life. However, groups aspiring to gain political power can only obtain and use it if they have economic power as well. Economic power allows a group to possess and exercise control over its own power rather than seeking access to another's power. So that's the problem, right? When people run these get out the vote drives, there's nothing wrong with black people voting. The problem is that when you're voting without an economic base, you're basically voting to give someone else power. That's what you're effectively doing. So you have to get the economic base intact in order for this to work. Now, those of you who are listening online, I'm going to shut the speed down in a minute. If you want to join us, you can join us for free. Go to blackkeystogreatness.com and you can sign up for free. But I'm going to shut this down in a minute, and we're going to keep going. So the next page, on page 34, on Black Labor, White Wealth, which, by the way, if you don't have a copy of the book, you can get one at powernomics.com. If you can't get it there, or if you want to also look at my books, I have books as well. You can go to drboycebooks.com. That's drboycebooks.com. But go to powernomics.com if you want to get Dr. Anderson's books. See if they have any. If they don't have any, we'll sell you a copy of one of our books. But I'd rather you support what Dr. Anderson is doing. That's extremely important. You must support the things that you believe in. Stop giving all your money away to people who don't like you. That's very important. All right. So, okay, good. I see Dr. Sherwin says that she has the library pack. I love it. I think that's great. Okay. So he says voting, illusionary power. Voting in publicly held elections is a key source of power in any democratic society. If the voting groups have certain collateral forms of power, and that's what he's saying. Okay. Emancipation and amendments to the Constitution gave blacks the legal right to vote. Probably the only instance in which blacks exercise true group power is through block voting. But without wealth, numerical, or social accountability powers, voting becomes a weak form of power for blacks. Voting rights have pacified blacks by allowing them to make choices, but never decisions. So he's making a difference here. He's making a distinction. He says you're allowed to make choices, but you're not making decisions. So that's interesting. I'm going to circle that. So you're making choices, so you're choosing which candidate to vote for, but you're not making decisions on what's going to happen to your community. And that explains precisely why you've elected all these black people and nothing is happening. Okay. They could only vote their choice for candidates about whom the dominant white society had already made decisions. So white people pick your options, and then you pick which option you want. So they get to decide amongst all the hundreds of candidates that you could have voted for, and they pick two or three, and they say, pick one of these two or three. All right. The weakness of blacks' voting power was demonstrated when a white anti-Reconstruction backlash in the South took voting rights from blacks within a generation after they were granted in the mid-1860s. It took nearly another century to restore blacks' access to the ballot box. Since the 1960s, blacks' consistent level of voter participation indicates that they steadfastly believe that their voting power can significantly change their life conditions. This will not happen, though much effort and expense go into black voter registration and get out the vote projects. Blacks have successfully put black and white candidates into high governmental offices by voting in blocks. But blacks have failed to buttress their block voting with other forms of group power building activity. Voting itself is a limited transitory form of power that ends when the polls close. With the block vote, blacks may cast the decisive votes that put a candidate into office, but they cannot make that new office holder deliver. Threats can be made, but voting power cannot be exercised outside the ballot box. Since elections are held only every 2 or 4 years, the black electorate can be ignored or further damaged by those they put into public office. Blacks' limited income and wealth encourage them to support their political candidates with campaign workers and votes at the ballot boxes. But he who pays the piper calls the tune. Black communities in recent years have failed to use their limited financial power and resources to persuade outside forces to create change within black communities. One of the most noteworthy times that they did was the Alabama bus boycott. Beyond a doubt, it was more effective than the ballot box. When money stopped flowing from black to white hands, the white society in Alabama listened and changed a little. So here's what he's saying, basically. He's basically saying, sorry, I got something in my eye. He's basically saying that when you don't have financial power, your voting power doesn't mean a whole lot. It's like for those of you that are football fans, you may get this. It's like if I have a football team and I recruit the best running back in the world, but I don't have good offensive linemen, Are there any football fans who could tell me what happens if I have the best running back and the best quarterback in the world, but I don't bring any offensive linemen to the team? They have nobody blocking for them, nobody to protect the quarterback. What's going to happen to my quarterback? Is my team going to win games like that? Can I win football games if I have nobody blocking for the backfield? Right. You're going to lose. It doesn't matter. You got the best quarterback in history, but if you have no linemen, then that quarterback's going to get killed. Right. Well, the same thing is true for your voting rights. Right. Voting itself is not a bad thing. It can make a difference. But if you don't have the economic power that those are your linemen. That's what protects the power of your vote. And so if you don't have that, then you have nobody blocking for your quarterback, and every game you're going to lose, and you're going to wonder why, because you're going to say, my God, we have the best quarterback ever, and he shows up and he plays every game and he does his best, but we keep losing and he's injured and we don't know why. So let's keep going. Even when blacks vote blacks into public office, their ballot box victories do not necessarily translate into improved social and economic conditions for black people. Some black elected officials have been reluctant to initiate programs solely targeted to blacks. Many have been convinced that we live in a colorblind society or are simply afraid to push for black causes. Thus, black political power has yet to become an effective strategy for getting vitally needed resources to black communities. Though the rule of politics is something for something, black Americans are never specifically rewarded for their overwhelming support for black candidates for public office. Black officials are skittish about using the powers of their offices to specifically address the needs of black communities because they are concerned about generating a white backlash. Anybody remember when Barack Obama said that the reason he didn't do anything for black people is because he was afraid of what white people were going to say? I don't know if y'all remember that. This is not anti-Obama. We ain't got time for that. But you all remember that? I don't know if you remember that. Well, Obama said the reason he couldn't he wanted to do more for black people, but he couldn't because he was going to get this white backlash, right? So basically what he's kind of saying is that I knew it was the right thing to do, but white people have power and you don't. So because they have power and you don't, I had to respect their power, and I couldn't respect you because you don't have any power. And I like y'all, and I really want to do right by you, but you came into the store with no money, and white people were dropping $100 bills on the counter, right? And that's what it is, right? It's not about ethics and morals and the right or wrong. You've had the moral high ground for hundreds of years. You've always had the moral high ground, but the moral high ground is a very different thing from what it means to have the actual physical and power high ground, right? The powerful person typically wins. The person who's right just gets the satisfaction of knowing that they were right. Okay. All right. So I'm going to actually share a chart with you guys. I'm going to put it on the screen. It's on page 35 in the book Black Labor, White Wealth, and it is a chart that shows how the number of black elected officials has actually impacted black quality of life. And it proves beyond any doubt that electing black officials is a waste of damn time when it comes to improving black quality of life. It is not a waste of time when it comes to feeling good. It's not a waste of time when it comes to symbolism. It's not a waste of time in terms of saying to your kids, like, look, there's a black person in public office and you should feel inspired by that. But it is a complete waste of time when you talk about improving black quality of life and putting money into black people's pockets. So I'm going to put this on the screen. I'm going to actually take a picture of it on my phone and screen share it. So because of that, I'm going to have to end the public feed. So everybody who's listening on the YouTube channel or Facebook, if you go to blackkeystogreatness.com, you can come into class and you can see the chart and hang out with us. We're going to keep going. And for those of you that are in here, give me 1 second. I'm going to go ahead and put this on the screen. So go to blackkeystogreatness.com if you want to join us.